In 1941, famed Royal Naval Fleet Air Arm pilot Eric Winkle Brown was returning home after a mission to protect British convoys in Gibraltar from the Germans when a shell smashed through his windshield and a large piece of glass came into his mouth. Concussed, Brown began to fade out of consciousness. Fortunately, however, his wing leader talked to him during the entire trip, urging him to stay awake and alive. If he had closed his eyes, he later recalled, quote, "That would have been that." The whole time, his leader made an effort to keep him going. Barely conscious, the extraordinary pilot seemed to be doing exactly what he was told to with his aircraft. Under the expert direction of his superior, Brown managed to land on the deck of a friendly carrier, although he didn't remember the incident at all. Out of action, Brown returned home to recover from his injuries. When he woke up, he was shocked to learn that the aircraft that had almost ended his life had been an airliner, the Focke-Wulf WW2 Condor. Resolved to take it down, the young pilot devoted himself to studying German design closely. But he soon realized that it had no blind spots, except for one. In the mid-1930s, Germany and the US were building a reputation as the emerging technologies of the 20th century built bridges across continents. At a time when airlines used seaplanes for long routes in order to afford flying such distances over water, the concept of a land plane that could carry passengers from Berlin to New York and back was groundbreaking. In that context, engineer Kurt Tank of Focke-Wulf sent an ambitious design to Dr. Rudolf Stussel of Deutsche Lufthansa. The proposed aircraft would have to be big, so big and with such a tremendous wingspan that it earned the nickname Condor in honor of the giant bird. The FW200 was innovative in its cruising altitude. It was designed to fly 9,800 feet above the ground without a pressurized cabin. In fact, the plane reached twice the altitude of conventional airliners in the 1930s, until other high-altitude passenger aircraft, such as the Boeing 307 in 1940 and the Douglas DC-4 in 1942, started flying. As the Condor was being developed, relations between America and Germany had still not deteriorated completely, and flying to the US was not only the Condor's primary objective, but it also used American parts in its design. The initial prototype, finished in 1937, was powered by 4 American 875 horsepower Pratt & Whitney Hornet radial engines and could take up to 26 passengers to a distance of 3,000 kilometers. Later on, Germany switched the American engines to German 720 horsepower BMW 132 G1 radials. The amicable relationship between the two superpowers was just about to take a turn for the worse. The improved FW200S1, with additional fuel tanks, made numerous record flights in its day. As the first heavier-than-air airliner to fly non-stop between Berlin and New York, the type covered over 4,000 miles in the air. Besides, the Naval aircraft also accomplished a flight between Berlin and Floyd Bennett Field, New York, in August of 1938, in just under 24 hours 56 minutes. The return flight on August 13th broke the record in 19 hours 47 minutes. Likewise, that same year, the FW200 flew to Tokyo in 46 hours with 3 stops. Soon after, with World War II looming ever closer, the Imperial Japanese Navy requested a military version of the FW200 for reconnaissance missions. Thus, Kurt Tank designed a Condor with several military tools and capabilities. However, the military Condor would never be delivered to the Japanese, as the full-scale conflict broke out in September 1939. At that point, Germany decided to keep the military version for its own use, and as flights from Germany to the US were increasingly unlikely, most of the remaining Condor units were retrofitted to serve as warplanes. Despite the sudden role change, many Condors had already been sold to Brazil, and they continued to serve as airliners. In Germany, Deutsche Lufthansa also kept several planes that would continue to carry passengers, except that now, in a divided world, they would only operate between Axis-friendly territories. Even before the war broke out, the Condor was already part of the planning for the German onslaughts that were soon to come. In 1939, German Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop used a specially equipped Condor, Grenzmark, during his 2 visits to Moscow to negotiate and sign the non-aggression treaty between Germany and the Soviet Union. The Luftwaffe initially used the modified Condor to support the Kriegsmarine, making broad trips across the North Sea, and after the fall of France, the Atlantic Ocean, in extensive patrols and reconnaissance sorties. The Condors would pinpoint the location of Allied convoys and warships so that German U-boats could intercept them. Soon, the makeshift reconnaissance Condors were fitted to carry explosive payloads of up to 2,200 pounds, as well as naval mines. Also, the Condors became exceptionally efficient bombers during the war's early phase, as the Allies still lacked substantial anti-maritime equipment. From June 1940 to February 1941, the aircraft sank over 365 tons of Allied shipping, despite their rather primitive bombing maneuvers. Because the Condors were not designed as bombers, they had to perform extremely low-altitude raids to cover the target ship with 3 bombs that guaranteed a hit. Still, the airliner-turned-bomber performed so well that Winston Churchill called it the, quote, "scourge of the Atlantic," for contributing to the severe Allied shipping losses during the Battle of the Atlantic. But that would soon change. It was then that Captain Eric Winkle Brown first met with the enemy. In September 1941, he was sent to protect Allied supply lines that sailed from Liverpool to Gibraltar and back. Their targets were the fairly imposing Condors. In his words, quote, "It's a thrill because it's a dark, menacing shape. It really looks evil. It's electrifying, and you feel a little helpless." Upon return, the pilot was attacked, and his aircraft was seriously damaged by a Focke-Wulf FW-200. He narrowly survived. Following the incident, Brown studied the Condor intently for some time, but he couldn't find any weaknesses at first. Eventually, he found a soft spot. Through painstaking work, Brown found out that the forward-firing machine gun positions could swivel to an extent, but could only fire at a certain angle. Beyond that point, a round would hit its own fuselage. Working out the arc and trajectory of the projectile, the astute Brit realized the Condor had a blind spot, but that required a head-on frontal attack. The Condor was a huge threat to Allied shipping in the Atlantic, but Winkle Brown resolved to take the matter into his own hands. Noting that the type had a single blind spot and that it would only be vulnerable to a frontal attack, the brave pilot charged ahead. During his second trip to Gibraltar, he put his discovery into practice. In an interview, he recalled, quote, "When I eventually managed to get this aircraft into a situation where he was nipping in and out of a cloud, it was rather difficult to keep up with him. I made an absolutely flat attack. When I opened fire, I could see the pilot's windscreen shattering. Immediately, the Condor plummeted into the abyss." Brown continued using this tactic and soon taught it to other pilots, who promptly downed 4 more Condors. As the war dragged on, Germany's aircraft manufacturing capabilities became severely strained, and the Bf-138C flying boat became Germany's primary reconnaissance aircraft. Thus, it was ordered that the Condor crews immediately stop attack operations and preserve the already low numbers that remained in service. As a result, the Condors were solely used as transport aircraft, delivering men and supplies to the ever-spreading German forces on the Eastern Front. However, as the German Sixth Army became entrapped within the city ruins during the Battle of Stalingrad, the Condors were used in attempts to supply the starving soldiers. Hitler himself had taken command of the Stalingrad operation, and he vehemently refused to withdraw or surrender before the Soviets. Still, such stubbornness came from an infamous miscalculation, as Hermann Göring assured Hitler that the Luftwaffe could effectively supply the stranded troops using cargo planes and air superiority. Göring then used all the Condors available to him and other cargo planes to deliver food and ammunition to the Sixth Army as it fiercely withstood the Soviet attacks and the overwhelming winter cold. However, the Germans significantly overestimated their airborne capabilities against the Soviets' anti-aircraft operations, resulting in the starvation of thousands of German soldiers trapped in the Stalingrad and leading to the surrender of the few remaining troops. The Condor would continue serving as a German transport aircraft until the war's end. The Focke-Wulf FW-200C1, initially seen as an aviation marvel, faced significant structural challenges. The aircraft's fuselage, especially behind the wing, was prone to braking during landings, resulting in the loss of at least 8 units. This flaw revealed a critical underestimation of the airframe's ability to handle increased weight and stress, making it a hastily adapted combat aircraft plagued by shortcomings, including insufficient armament and a vulnerable fuel system. The subsequent FW200C3 model incorporated improvements like structural reinforcements, an added gun turret, enhanced armaments, and an additional crew member. However, these upgrades paradoxically increased its weight and reduced its speed. In terms of offensive capabilities, the FW200C was equipped with advanced targeting equipment, including the Revi bomb sight and the Lufte 7D. The FW200C4 further integrated radar systems for anti-shipping operations, representing technological advancements, but also adding to the weight problem. The FW200C's performance was subpar, with a top speed of 330 km per hour at altitude, dropping to 280 km per hour at sea level. Pilots were advised against exceeding 450 km per hour or making sharp maneuvers to avoid structural failure. Despite these limitations, the aircraft had impressive endurance, capable of 14 to 18-hour flights, though this meant a reduced bomb load, usually limited to 4 250-kilogram bombs on extended missions. But the Condor also gained a prestigious role as Adolf Hitler's personal transport, reflecting the novelty of air travel for world leaders at the time. Hitler's pilot, Hans Bauer, advocated for the Condor over the previous Junkers Ju-52, highlighting its safety and reliability. This led to the selection of a specific Condor for Hitler, which underwent significant modifications to meet his requirements. The 26-passenger aircraft was transformed into a luxurious 2-cabin plane. Hitler's main cabin featured an armored, parachute-equipped desk and a quick escape hatch. The windows were reinforced with bulletproof glass. The second cabin, designed for advisors and guests, mimicked a first-class railway carriage. Additionally, the plane was armed with defensive turrets, including a 13mm MG-131 machine gun and a 7.1mm MG-15 nose turret. Nicknamed Immelmann III after World War I ace Max Immelmann and marked D-600, Hitler's Condor was always accompanied by a second Condor, carrying his staff and personal items. Security measures were stringent, including a pre-flight test to rule out altitude-triggered bombs. As World War II neared its end, Hitler's travels decreased, and the Immelmann III remained mostly at Berlin-Tempelhof Airport. On July 18, 1944, an Allied bombing raid destroyed the aircraft as the days of the Third Reich neared the end.